New details pouring in at this hour about yesterday's horrific shooting, targeting GOP lawmakers practicing for a charity baseball game. This as the number 3 in the House leadership, Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise, remains in critical condition and will require more surgeries. 3 others were also shot and injured. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith. Here today, host of Kennedy on Fox Business, Kennedy. Also from FBN, the anchor of the Intelligence Report, Trish Regan. Democratic strategist and senior director of research for Bustle.com, Jessica Tarlov is here. And today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, Brian Kilmeade, co-host of Fox and Friends and host of his nationally syndicated radio show, Kilmeade and Friends, and he is outnumbered. We thought you didn't have enough to do today, Brian.
Right, I know. But I don't know if we want to give away our secret that you were just on the show. Ooh. We were just on the radio show.
And I also want to point out that Jessica Tarlov is here for the first time.
I'm so excited.
Wow.
And I am this couch for a long time.
I'm sorry that we had to sit you two next to each other, but
like
that'll work.
Why is that? Why are you sorry? It's a little offensive.
Yeah, just setting this up. All right, but there's a lot going on. Let's get right to it. It may be a long road to recovery for Congressman Scalise. The House Majority Whip in critical condition and will require more surgery. Doctors saying the bullet that tore into him traveled across his pelvis, fracturing bones, injuring internal organs, and causing severe bleeding. Doug McKelway joins us live from the Washington Hospital Center, where the congressman is being treated. Our thoughts are with him. What is the latest there, Doug?
Well, the latest is that Vice President Pence and his wife Karen visited Scalise here at MedStar Hospital early this morning. And shortly after their visit, the Vice President tweeted out a photograph and these words saying, "Karen and I just left MedStar. Thank docs and staff. Keep Steve Scalise, Officer Griner, and all involved and their loved ones in your prayers." There's really no new word on Scalise's condition since that statement from the hospital came out at 8:15, a portion of which you just read last night, conveying the true gravity of the situation here. In many respects, that report raises more questions than it answers because the pelvis, as we all know, protects so many vital organs from the bladder to the intestines, the base of the spine, so it raises many, many daunting questions about the recovery ahead that lies ahead for Steve Scalise. Last night, after his surgery, President Trump and First Lady Melania visited Scalise, accompanied by aides, including Sean Spicer. They were seen bringing 2 bouquets of flowers in. The personal physician of the president was also in attendance, conferring with doctors here. The first couple sat down by his bedside, but it is unclear whether Mr. Scalise was conscious at the time. Afterwards, the president tweeted, and I quote, "Just left the hospital. Rep. Steve Scalise, one of the truly great people, is in a very tough shape, but he is a real fighter. Pray for Steve." The president also met with a Capitol Police Officer, Crystal Griner, who was wounded in the leg and who, along with the other Capitol Police Officer, David Bailey, was credited with bringing the gunman down and saving a lot of lives. Another one of the wounded, Zach Barth, who is an aide to Congressman Roger Williams, was shot through the calf, and remarkably, he was back at work in the Capitol today. And Brian Kilmeade, I know you had a chance to speak to him on Fox and Friends this morning. Here's a bit of what he had to say.
Then I see him turn his gun towards me, and it just starts popping all around me. He hits me in my leg, and at that point, you know, my adrenaline is pumping, and my fight or flight reflexes, they take control, and I decide if I want to live, I need to get to better cover. So I sprint down, running for my life, sprint down the first base line into the dugout, and I just jump in, and I jump into the arms of the congressman.
Meanwhile, family members of Matt Micah, who is head of government relations for Tyson Foods, say that he was shot multiple times. He remains in intensive care and in critical condition at George Washington University Hospital. And lastly, we know that the entire Scalise family, as well as all of his aides, will be at tonight's baseball game. Promises to be an incredibly emotional experience for all involved, no doubt. Back to you, Sandra.
All right, Doug McKelway, thank you. Meanwhile, we're learning more about the shooter and his violent past. James Hodgkinson's arrest record includes a history of domestic violence. The 66-year-old home inspector was also a Bernie Sanders supporter who raged against Republicans and President Trump on his Facebook page. In one post back in March, Hodgkinson writing, quote, "Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump and company." Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live with brand new details. Catherine?
Well, thank you, Sandra. We are hearing from the suspect for the first time in his own words with this 2011 interview at an Occupy protest in St. Louis, shot by Fox affiliate KTVI.
The 99% are getting pushed around, and the 1% are just not giving a
Page bearing the suspect's name, James Hodgkinson, carries the same themes, including photos of Bernie Sanders as well as anti-Trump rhetoric. An Illinois newspaper reports that the suspect sent letters to the editor a year after that rally, and he railed against Republicans and tax policies, writing, "I have never said life sucks, only the policies of the Republicans." Today, the ATF is tracing 2 weapons, a shotgun and a rifle, as a neighbor of the suspect tells Fox about an incident in Belleville, Illinois last March that only stopped after the police were called in.
I yelled at him. I said, "Hey, stop shooting over there. There's houses over there and everything." And I didn't get any kind of a notion from him that he heard me or that he even cared.
So you came out and said you didn't tell him to stop?
No, we just made sure that, he knew about the safety risks, and there is homes around here, and that we wanted to make sure that he understood all that. And once he did, he stopped.
An Illinois newspaper also reports that he had a violent history with one 2006 incident involving his foster daughter, but it was not enough to block him from legally owning, a firearm, Sandra.
All right, Catherine Herridge, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, the shooting now putting a spotlight on the political rhetoric that has grown increasingly ugly since the presidential election. Just hours after the incident, Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio appeared to place some blame on President Trump, saying he's dividing the country.
I don't blame the president for this. I don't blame any single political figure for this. But for whatever reason, unleashed in our country is more anti-Semitism and more race talk, more racism. And the president should also be the healer in chief. And instead, this president's chosen to divide and name call, and that doesn't serve this country. Probably doesn't even serve his interests. It certainly doesn't serve his party's interests.
Meantime, Republican Congressman Chris Collins pointed the finger at Democrats and their anger toward the GOP. But this morning, the New York lawmaker walking back his remarks, saying both sides, including himself, need to tone it down. Watch.
I'm willing to admit that was wrong for me to say. That would actually be going in the wrong direction. And I myself am going to try to tone down some of my rhetoric, and I would invite my Democrat friends, and they are friends, to do likewise. And I think all of us have now had a chance to reflect, look in the mirror, and say, it's on all of us, and it is a 24/7 news cycle, and elections are coming up next year. And it's been an especially ugly 6 months.
But many lawmakers making impassioned pleas for unity after the shooting, reminding Americans that we're all in this together.
So before this House returns to its business, let's just slow down and reflect, to think about how we're all being tested right now, because we are being tested right now. I ask each of you to join me, to resolve, to come together, to lift each other up, and to show the country, to show the world, that we are one house, the people's house, united in our humanity.
We need to have this deep respect for each other, whether we disagree politically, whether we come from a different place, whether we have a different religion or race, and actually know we can respect each other even while we disagree, and disagree strongly.
We have the right to be free in this country. We have the right to elect our leaders, and we have the right to go vote against them if we disagree with their policies. But we've got to ratchet down the rhetoric that we've seen, not only on social media, but in the media, in the 24-hour news cycle. These are the things that have to stop. This is a result, I believe, of political, rhetorical terrorism. That has to stop.
What's happened in our country over the last several years, and even more so last year, is the level of vitriol and harsh rhetoric has escalated to a point that I've never seen in my life. The thought that anyone would take somebody else's life or try to is just wrong. And to target a member of Congress, particularly in this baseball practice situation, is just terrible.
Well, that last congressman you saw in that clip, a Democrat, Ron Barber of Arizona, served as an aide to former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and was with her when she was severely injured in a shooting back in 2011. He was also hurt in that attack. For the most part, the word is unity. A lot of lawmakers discussing that today. Is this a come-together moment?
I think it's possible, and here's why. I know we've had horrific shootings with more casualties, but never this close, never directly targeted at a party, at a bunch of players. You say, well, I wonder what he was up to when he shot him. There's a lot of different theories. No. He asked, this shooter, who's practicing? GOP lawmakers. Where are they doing it? Right by the Capitol. What are they doing it for? They're going to go play in a bipartisan game. And that's because they were targeted because of their party, and they were targeted by this guy because he's a Bernie Sanders supporter. And the fact that a few miles away is where everybody works, I think it drives things home. I think things could change. And I think if, for example, Madonna got up tomorrow and said, let's burn the White House down, I think that if you saw Kathy Griffin holding a picture of Donald Trump's alleged decapitated head, I think both parties would jump on and say, enough of this, where I think 48 hours ago the answer would have been, who cares?
But then still, Sherrod Brown, we all kind of had a reaction watching him say, it's not a time to point fingers, but then he went on to point fingers at Donald Trump for inciting this sort of environment.
Definitely. I mean, Sherrod Brown wanted to make a point about it, but also to be as PC as possible about it. I would add also that Mark Sanford, a Republican, said that Donald Trump was partially to blame for this, and I'm sure he's going to be walking it back soon. I think it is a unity moment. I would add to what Brian said that what happened to Gabby Giffords should have also been a unity moment at this level. I understand that no one said to her, are you a Democrat, and then shot her. But certainly, it was a political scene. There were political aides everywhere. And it's worrisome to me that we are still not any better, having seen this in 2011 and knowing of all the shootings that you alluded to. I mean, if we don't fix things post Newtown, I don't know what we are as a country.
But it's not just the shootings. That's the thing. I mean, that's the thing that really bums me out about this. It's the convenient gun control narrative, and we don't know where the guy. I'm not talking about
gun control.
No, I know
we
that.
We will in a minute.
But Terry McAuliffe certainly did. But you have a guy, and it's not necessarily Donald Trump. It's also not necessarily Bernie Sanders.
I don't absolutely. Bernie Sanders responded right away.
Millions of followers who engaged in intense rhetoric and political passion on social media. They don't go out and target people. And when someone does target people, and when it is politically motivated, and when he is trying to change behavior, that is terrorism.
There is, however,
I think Rodney Davis was right about that when he categorized it as such. And there are two different things. One is the psychotic actions of a clearly mentally unstable, murderous person. The only reason this wasn't a murder is because that guy was a horrible shot. That's one thing. The political rhetoric and maybe being curious about other people's political backgrounds and how they came to their opinions, that's a completely separate
There's a very different
conversation.
There's a big difference between political passion and caring about a particular point of view and getting that viewpoint across, and then what we've crossed over into, which is frankly losing all sense of decency, all sense of humanity, what Kathy Griffin did. Let me share with you, there was a professor at the Art Institute of Washington, Dr. John Griffin, who weeks earlier had said all the Republican Party members on Capitol Hill should be lined up and shot. I mean, that is crossing a line where it is no longer about the political ideals which are at stake, and it's turning it into something else where we are losing our sense of who we are as a country,
Jessica,
and who we are as human beings.
I want to bring in some of these headlines. This running in some major papers. The New York Times, this headline, America's lethal politics. LA Times, reaction to shooting reveals a nation that doesn't just disagree, it hates. The Boston Globe, after Alexandria shooting, both parties owe the nation a more civil political dialogue. Jessica?
Oh, I totally agree with that. I do think we have a rhetoric problem. We also do have a gun problem, and I know that we will discuss that. I'm not sure whenever the time is right to talk about it. It seems like we should perennially be talking about it until we do have stricter laws. But as to what you said, Trish, I mean, just last week, Donald Trump Jr. came on this network and he said the Democrats weren't even humans. I mean, that's coming from the president's son. So this isn't just a liberal problem that we use harsh rhetoric here. This is both sides.
That's not a call to kill.
No, I'm not saying that it is, but just bringing up the rhetoric point and saying we need a civil discourse, we need that from the White House as well.
Do you think this guy would have killed people with a firebomb or his cargo van if he didn't have access to weapons?
Oh, yeah, I think this is just it's a lunatic
gun problem.
Absolutely. I would just like to add this. I think part of it fundamentally is our politics are all or nothing right now. Yeah. You win, you have the White House, you have the House, you have the Senate. I lose. So you're losing for at least 2 years, maybe 4 years. It's a horrible feeling for a competitive country. So the whole compromise thing is out the window. If you compromise, you lose your job. If you have tax reform and you bring in some democratic principles, you've sold out your soul. So I think there might be something to, okay, we lose, we're in the minority. We're not going to get as much, but maybe we don't have to get zero. So right now, Mitch McConnell's, the only way he can get forward with Obamacare in the current situation is to do it behind closed doors, literally, not even tell his own party and move it forward. It might be the work of genius. It might be just fantastic, but it just creates anger because everyone's locked out of it, including the Republicans. When you do it, there's no more coming across the aisle. Actually, coming across the aisle is Republicans coming together with Republicans.
Well, and the other thing, to your point, is if you express any sort of interest in the ideas that the president has talked about, not the president as a person, and you do that with someone who has an opposing viewpoint, you are the enemy. I mean, you will see no quicker way of losing friends than if you go on.
Saw this with Kevin Plank, right? I mean, the CEO of Under Armour, he came out and said, yeah, I like some of the economic ideas that Donald Trump is proposing.
He lost Steph Curry on
people went nuts, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
He lost a bunch of athletes, and they're not coming to the White House.
And I think there are plenty of CEOs right now that are very reluctant to say, yes, I think we need tax reform. I like what Donald Trump is talking about in terms of repeal and replace. They don't want to say it because they are fearful that the other side is going to come after them in a way that
look at climate change. After the president said he was going to pull out of the Paris Accord, you know, the advisors, the corporate advisors to the president, several of them pulled out. Because of the political incorrectness.
He can't possibly be somebody you can work with if he goes against.
Or because they believe in climate change and they think that it's a radically bad decision for the United States to stop leading.
Don't you want to have a voice at the table, though? I mean, what they're doing is they're
it's just us and Assad who are saying no to this. Nicaragua isn't part of it because it doesn't go far enough. We're alone with a massive vote of it.
That was just well,
how dare you? Thanks, Kennedy.
I think I can speak for all of us when our thoughts and prayers are with Congressman Scalise and his family as he tries to make a recovery, still in the hospital, more surgeries to come. All right, meantime, this didn't take long. It took just 3 hours after yesterday's shooting for a top Democrat to call for more gun control. Whether this was the right time, we debate that. Plus, President Trump firing back after it was reported that the special counsel overseeing the Russia investigation is looking into whether he tried to obstruct justice. The president's lawyer pointing out that the story comes from yet another illegal leak amid questions about the special counsel's neutrality. And after the show, you can join our live chat by clicking on the Overtime tab at foxnews.com/outnumbered FNC or go to facebook.com/outnumbered FNC. Brian Kilmeade, you're going to stick around, right?
If you want.
We're asking him now because he's on the spot.
Best work on the internet.
All right, you can also tweet us. We look at those during the show. We'll see you after the show as well. Welcome back to Outnumbered. It didn't take long after yesterday's shooting attack on a gathering of GOP lawmakers for the ongoing debate over guns to be renewed. Just 3 hours after news broke that Congressman Steve Scalise and others had been shot, Governor Terry McAuliffe, Democrat of Virginia, called for greater gun restrictions. Watch.
There are too many guns on the street. We lose 93 million Americans a day to gun violence. I mean, I've long talked about this. Background check, shutting down gun show loopholes. You know, that's not for today's discussion, but it's not just about politicians. We worry about this every day for all of our citizens.
You mean to say 93 million? That's a big number. Are you sure about
93 million, 93 individuals a day.
Oh, big difference there. We'd be out of people by the weekend.
Right.
Yeah, you know, this isn't the time for that conversation, but I'm going to go ahead and have it. That's what he was saying. Other Democrats steered clear of that debate, including gun control advocates like Senator Chuck Schumer. Watch.
I was absolutely shaken by the news of a shooting early this morning at the baseball field in Alexandria, where many of my friends and colleagues were practicing for the annual congressional baseball game, an event that brings us together each year. Let us pray that they and any others who are injured are able to recover quickly. This morning is the most sobering reminder of how thankful we should be for the service of the Capitol Police Force.
Meantime, Georgia Congressman Barry Loudermilk, a member of the GOP baseball squad who was on the scene, says Congress should explore allowing lawmakers to carry weapons to defend themselves. In fact, a fellow Republican minutes ago saying he's introducing a bill that would allow reciprocity for those who have concealed carry permits from their home states to carry them in Washington. And Texas Republican Roger Williams, who was also there, says he would have been much more comfortable with a gun at the field.
We were sitting ducks. I mean, we had nothing to fight back with but bats if it got to that.
Would you feel safer if you had the ability to carry a gun, including on the Capitol premises and other places where the general public isn't allowed?
Remember two things. Well, first of all, I'm for the Second Amendment, big Second Amendment guy, and I'm from Texas. So yes, I would have felt a lot more comfortable if we were able to do that.
And he's absolutely right about that, Brian. All of those people would be dead if it weren't for guns. Guns saved people's lives yesterday.
Right. And Senator Schumer gets it. And here's why. Because he knows his colleagues would have felt helpless. And their instinct weren't like, I can't believe this guy has a gun. Their instincts are, I can't believe I don't have a gun to shoot back. Because for the most part, you want to be able to defend yourself, but you have no shot against these cowards who want to stand back with a rifle they obviously don't know how to use and take you out. I'll add something else to this whole thing. For the most part, these assassins don't want to be going to situations where they're in a fight. They like massacres. Yeah. So they want, if they knew there was a chance of these lawmakers with a gun, they probably wouldn't have picked that. They like really soft targets.
Absolutely. Like, I don't know, gun-free zones oftentimes, which is what they typically target. So, Jessica, I think it is an inappropriate time to have this discussion because we don't know where he got the guns. A lot of people are pointing out
a permit at home in Illinois.
Yeah, but a lot of people are pointing out that there are lax gun laws in Virginia, as though somehow that would go into his factoring and critical thinking, being steps away from D.C., where it's very hard to get a gun permit.
Yeah, absolutely. And returning to what we were talking about in the first block, it's not the right time, but it's also the right time to be talking about it because guns were used in this. This was a lunatic, but that was his weapon of choice. He got it from Illinois here. I was looking up some statistics that I thought were interesting. In the last year, there have been 300,000 guns that were purchased without a background check, according to the FBI. And this is after all of the discussion post-Charleston, where Dylan Roof was able to get around the system and get a gun and walk into the church and kill 9 people. And that weighs heavy on all of us, just as Newtown does, as what Gabby Giffords happened to her. I mean, we didn't even talk about that shooting that happened in the UPS facility because we were all paying attention to what happened to Steve Scalise. I mean, this is a daily occurrence. So I understand that there is a unity moment that needs to be had here, but it's also important to talk about the weapon of choice that is being used in these crimes by lunatics who can get their hands on them.
Yeah, but nowadays with other terrorists, though. Yeah, exactly right.
I mean, they'll use
in other terror strikes that we've seen, especially in the UK, yeah, I mean, we saw it at Ohio State where a guy tried to ram his car into a bunch of people, and he was
sometimes I think this
stopped by law enforcement.
Right? In other words, we need to be talking about how we improve the political conversation and basically don't encourage these crazies to do what they're doing. The whole gun control issue. Look, I'm from, I've said this before, live free or die, New Hampshire. Okay, we were not a big gun family, but I knew a lot of people that were. They hunted. You have a right to protect yourself. That's all good. I'm with you in that we can use more in the way of background checks. Nothing wrong with that. You might as well, if you get a driver's license, you have to go through a certain amount of training to get the driver's license. We could do the same thing with guns. But this is not the time necessary to be talking about this. This is the time to be talking about how we improve our rhetoric so that people aren't feeling this vitriol.
I want to bring Sandra in because you actually are very comfortable around firearms. You have been trained.
I am, but I think the question goes back to, do you think that this man, based on everything we have learned about his past and what his political strong political words that he has used on social media and all these things that he wanted to do away with Trump and company, do you think that he would have carried out this act even if he didn't have a gun as his weapon?
I think that he would have done something. This was a man clearly teetering on the edge. I just think that to only focus on this one incident ignores the countless lives, not 93 million a day, but 93 a day, that are taken as as a result of gun violence. So yes, I think he would have rammed his car and he would have done
suicide,
anything.
which are unfairly wrapped up in those statistics. And to your point about driver's licenses, having a driver's license in a car is not implicit in the Constitution, nor should it be. All right, the plot thickens in the Russia probe amid reports that Special Counsel Robert Mueller is now focusing on whether President Trump obstructed justice. But the president today calling it a witch hunt. Should the White House be concerned? And are more FBI leaks the real issue? We will discuss. Stay here.
Well, the Russia probe may be taking a new turn as the Washington Post reports that the special counsel is now looking into whether President Trump attempted to obstruct justice. Previously, the focus was on Russian meddling in the election, but now appears to have expanded. Special counsel Robert Mueller's team not commenting, but the president firing back on Twitter today, writing this. They made up a phony collusion with the Russian story, found zero proof, so now they go for obstruction of justice on the phony story. Nice. He also tweeted, "You are witnessing the single greatest witch hunt in American political history, led by some very bad and conflicted people." The president's lawyer also releasing a statement saying this. The FBI leak on information regarding the president is outrageous, inexcusable, and illegal. Your thoughts, Brian Kilmeade?
Well, they got to look to collaborate. I said this right.
Corroborate.
The testimony of what Comey said with the National Intelligence Director might have said one-on-one, where he said, "Hey, listen, can you tell everybody that there's no there when it comes to collusion, and Michael Flynn's a good guy, and back off. They're going to try to establish that." And I'm just struck by the fact that we thought with Robert Mueller in place, the leaks would stop. If you'd believe the Washington Post, not confirmed by the New York Times or CNN, they seem to exchange breaking stories. I don't know if you noticed the trend. They say 5 people briefed on the interview request said that the former deputy NSA chairman, Coates, as well as Rogers, are going to be interviewed sometime either this week or next week about what it was like one-on-one with Trump. What in fact he did ask you. And Newt Gingrich is among the people whose hair's on fire with this, says, should now be clear that Mueller is an anti-Trump special counsel. Ooh. Karl Rove warns this in the Wall Street Journal today.
Yes, he does.
And he thinks it's going to get a lot bigger. And a lot of people are worried about the fact that Mueller and Comey are thick as thieves.
To the
and
point,
they has hiring all these Democratic donors.
To that point, Karl Rove in the Wall Street Journal says, still what Trump has created, he has created a potential problem for himself when he said that he is willing to speak under oath to give his version of events. You remember he said 100% willing to, Trish. Mm-hmm. Karl Rove said that puts him in.
Yeah, and I'm sure his lawyers are going, oh no, because you just never know. You start opening up this can of worms. But, I think he's got a real problem in that he's the outsider. Donald Trump, our president, is the outsider that's coming in to a system that is not very welcoming, doesn't want him there, and you've got a bunch of elites basically at their cocktail party. He's crashing it, and he's not, maybe if he wanted to play their game, he would back off a little, he'd get the lay of the land, he'd let some of the surrogates do the dirty work, but that's not his style, right? He's full on, head on, I'm going to go make some changes. They don't like it, they don't like him, and I think you're going to see more and more leaks. Someone warned me the other day, they said, look, the problem is, in part, Comey was so well liked at the FBI that you run the risk, if you're out attacking Comey, which Donald Trump eventually did, as did his lawyer, you run the risk that all those troops, the rank and file that supported Comey, they're now going to be leaking in any which way they can, and none of them like them.
I heard there was going to be a mutiny last fall because of what Comey did in July among FBI agents.
But witch hunt is what the president is calling it. Jessica, is it?
I certainly think that people are interested to getting the bottom of this, and this is Republicans and Democrats. I just find it amazing when Donald Trump uses that term after what he did on the birtherism front, or even to the Central Park Five. I mean, this is someone who catapulted themselves into the political stratosphere with a witch hunt vis-a-vis Barack Obama. I think he is digging holes for himself that need not necessarily be dug. He should back off of this. I mean, the flip-flopping from the right from Newt Gingrich, who thought that Bob Mueller was the greatest thing to ever happen to this investigation, now suddenly...
But I guess, can I clarify that a little bit? Because there's a big difference between Donald Trump in 2008 or 2014 throwing rhetorical grenades and the intelligence community having the ability to spy on you and all of your operatives during the campaign and after the election, and then systematically leaking that information. There's a very big difference between being a private citizen who says incendiary things and being the president of the United States who's taken an oath to defend the Constitution in the country. And, you know, people who have a political agenda, who are supposed to be apolitical, who are supposed to be protecting this country, yet have no problem, as James Comey showed under oath, compromising that for their own political agenda. That's disconcerting.
No, I understand that it's disconcerting, and there are two topics here. There's what Donald Trump did, and there's a leaking issue. There is a leaking issue, and we shouldn't have as many leaks as we do. But now that we have James Comey and even Donald Trump's own son corroborating the fact that he did want the Flynn thing to go away, right? And then James Comey feels that he was fired because of, quote, the Russia thing, which is what he said to Lester Holt. I mean, that's not invented. That's not conspiracy theory. These are from their mouths.
But I hope you can let go of Flynn. I think it's a lot different from you better let go of
but
Flynn.
But there have been obstruction of justice cases that have hung on the I hope rhetoric. I mean, Adam Liptak has written about this. I'd encourage everyone to go and look at it. I mean, it's not just palling around. If he thought it was that, he needs to understand the office that he holds.
Well, he's not a lawyer.
Well,
okay.
He should talk to
Comey got last word. All right, both sides of the political aisle praising President Trump for his tone and tenor in a time of crisis following yesterday's tragic shooting. Does this mark a change, and can it help mend the deep partisan divide in Washington? We will discuss and debate probably.
Everyone who serves in our nation's capital is here because, above all, they love our country. We can all agree that we are blessed to be Americans, that our children deserve to grow up in a nation of safety and peace, and that we are strongest when we are unified and when we work together for the common good. Please take a moment today to cherish those you love, and always remember those who serve and keep us safe.
All right, President Trump receiving praise from both sides of the political aisle for his temperament following yesterday's shooting of Congressman Steve Scalise and 3 others. Today, the president visited wounded Capitol Officer Crystal Griner in the hospital where she's recovering now. And last night, he visited Scalise at his hospital where he continues to be treated. Earlier in the day, he delivered sympathetic remarks regarding the incident from the White House. Longtime Democratic spokesman Jim Manley weighed in on the president's overall performance, saying, quote, "It looks like Trump and his team took the shooting seriously and acted accordingly. His statement was measured and respectful and hit all the right notes when he issued a call for unity." And Republicans agree. Former White House spokesman Scott McClellan saying, quote, "I think he set the right tone and message. This is the time to set aside politics and for all of us to come together in support of those who were injured in this tragic shooting. The president has an important role at times like this to be the comforter in chief for the nation." So, Brian, did he fulfill that role?
Absolutely. Again, today, I think he was fine. I think he's at his element in a crisis situation. You see a lot of times when he has a crisis in his campaign, he seems to step up. Thought back to Robert Kraft, who says, you know, he was one of his many friends, and his wife dies of cancer. And during the whole process, Donald Trump kept in touch. After she died, he kept in touch. And again, in situations like this, him and Melania were right there in the hospital, right there this afternoon. Even the New York Times cited President Trump said just the right thing after the attack on Wednesday. We might have our disagreements, but here he's on the right track.
You know what was nice about it is I felt that the president was both optimistic and unifying, and those were 2 really important things, because oftentimes after shootings like this, President Obama would come out and give the country a finger-wagging gun control lecture, which I thought was oftentimes tone-deaf and inappropriate. Did you like the respite from that?
I thought Donald Trump did a great job yesterday. There have been a few moments throughout the campaign and his early presidency where I've had to, you know, take off my partisan hat and just give it up to him. And I think actually what you do see there is that he's not a partisan. I mean, this man, he hijacked the Republican Party to get here anyway. The guy's maybe more of a left-leaning independent naturally, and obviously has evolved to be more conservative. I thought he struck all the right tones, and I was happy to see those politicians who said we're going to take a break from this. Doesn't mean the conversation shouldn't continue about how to prevent them, but Yep, hats off.
Trish?
Yeah, very good moment for him. And you hate to think of it in terms of moments, but, you know, when the country is dealing with tragedy and dealing with crisis, they need to look to a leader. They need to look to the president for some comfort. And he definitely put forward that yesterday. And we should commend him for all he's doing, going to the hospital, his wife there by his side while they watch.
It is great that she's there now. It's even just been a few days, but I think it's wonderful to see her with him more.
I think it's also
fault him on it.
It's also a moment where you think to yourself, how many days in? Anybody keeping it 140, 150?
Sure. I don't know. I think we're 10% done. I know that.
It's Jessica.
I'm just saying.
It's unbelievable to think what has happened on his watch.
Right.
So soon, so early into his presidency.
This is the real first domestic crisis he has. It's a respite from the Russia collusion thing, which dominated, what was it, Tuesday? Then yesterday the shooting, and today is all about the shooting and the health of Steve Scalise.
Yeah. All right, well, the good news is the baseball game is going on tonight as planned. Lawmakers say the annual charity event is more important now than ever because it creates unity. But will that unity last when the game is over?
We do hope people come to the game tonight. I would hope that Nat Stadium could be full, 50,000 people that goes to charity. It's the right thing to do. It's the right time to play this game. There were some people that thought maybe should we not play it. But as Speaker Ryan and I and Joe Barton and Mike Dole talked about, we need to play this game. It's baseball. It's America.